Hi everybody, my name is Jennifer Pate. I am a librarian, a scholarly communications librarian at the University of North Alabama. We are in the very northwest corner of Alabama, where Tennessee and Mississippi and Alabama all meet. And with me, I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Just the slide forward.
Oh, do we have to do that?
Okay, so in case you don't know what you're here for, this is OER. I'm just saying. This is more or less a conversation that we're talking lively conversation, which means you guys are going to be participating. Congratulations. Very proud of you. Jennifer has said she's from UNA, which is in Florence. I'm Katherine Quinnell. I am from Athens State, which is between Florence and Huntsville. So I'm in the middle over there, and I'm also on the northern end of the state, and I'm the library director at Athens State.
Hi, I'm Ron Leonard. I'm the Director of Special Initiatives at the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, commonly referred to as ACHE. I've been with the Commission.
He's the money.
She thinks. I told him earlier, they better be nice to me or no more money. So I've been with the Commission for about 10 years. The first 8 years, I was the Director of the Network of Alabama Academic Libraries, which is a consortium consisting of ACHE and public and private four-year institutions libraries. So I come from a library background. If you were wondering, well, why is this government bureaucrat here? That's why.
He's here because he's Ron.
Yes. Okay, so the way these lively discussions are structured is that they are lively discussions. So we're going to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing in Alabama, but we welcome everybody's voice in this room. We have stretched out the cord as far as we can go. It's being recorded, so you need to be on microphone if you have a question. So we'll try to make sure that everybody gets a chance to come to the mic at some point so that they can be heard. So we're good.
We're good?
Yeah.
Come on. Oh, it turned off. Wait a minute.
Technological difficulties. Okay. So one of the first things we want to talk about is grant programs in our state, and we're going to let Ron kick that off because, again, we were talking about he's the money guy. And then I want to see what kind of grant programs you might have statewide or at your institutions, if you have anything you want to share. So I'll let Ron go.
As I mentioned, my previous job was as Director of the Network of Alabama Academic Libraries. So for years, I've been coming here and going to other national conferences, learning about what's going on with OER across the country. And when I learned about some of the different projects, I thought we can do this. Although Alabama is a poor state, we're rich in human resources. For example, my organization has people who will bend over backwards to assist one another. That's how we have been able to have such organizations as the Alabama Digital Preservation Network, nationally recognized, actually internationally recognized, other organizations as well, similar to that. So I thought we could do this, and we can model ourselves after Affordable Learning Georgia. I came from Georgia, I was familiar with Galileo, so I reached out to some of the folks there, learned about what they were doing, and we basically copied some of what they were doing. We knew right away that what we had to do first was provide grants to get the word out, basically to make people aware of what OER is, both the pros and the cons. So we had 3 big statewide all-day meetings. We provided lunch, which was a big draw. As you know, a lot of times if you have food, that's a big draw for people. We didn't charge anything, another big draw for people. So we had huge turnouts, both faculty and staff, and we spread them across the state so we could make them available to faculty and staff at all the 2- and 4-year institutions. We followed that up with an ACHE-ACCS. ACCS is the Alabama Community College System OER grant program. ACHE kicked in $30,000, ACCS kicked in $30,000. We got all kinds of applications. We were able to fund 23 projects and provide grants. What we wanted to do was we wanted faculty to replace their traditional print textbooks with OER. Either going out and find something already there on an OER repository or creating something from scratch. So the grants ranged anywhere from a few $100s to $5,000. We We're very successful. We started it last fall. Actually, last year I spoke about it. So in a few minutes, I'm going to give you kind of update on how it all turned out. It was an experimental study. Last fall, we asked the faculty members to either find something to use or to create something during the fall semester. Simultaneously, they were supposed to, or they did, teach with their existing print textbook. And they kept stats on grades, so on and so forth. Then in the spring, they actually used OER. And similarly, they kept stats on everything at that point. Now, since then, and that concluded this past spring, actually, we had about over 18,000 students involved. And remember, because of an experimental study, only about 9,000 of those actually saw a financial savings or cost avoidance. So something like 9,000 plus students saved on average about $200 plus, which may not sound like a lot, but every little bit helps. And I don't know if you have seen the College Board estimate, but the College Board estimate, if I remember correctly, for 2018-2019, estimates that the cost of textbooks annually is $1,240 for university students, and ironically, community college students, the estimate for community college students is even more, $1,440. So it's a bigger chunk out of their budget. And what makes it really bad is a lot of community college students in our state are lower income first generation. So we knew we had, prior to doing this, we knew we had to make college more affordable and accessible. That's what is at the mission of my organization. So we as I mentioned, we saved students on average over $200 for just that one semester. And if you think about it, it was just one textbook. So we're real pleased with the results. Since then, we've had a series of other grants. We've been able to make grants available to one of the community college systems, which has 3 branches. They wanted kind of a more customized workshop, so we provided a more customized workshop. And then we also provided grants to my colleagues here today, which I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about.
Since I'm closest, is that how it goes?
She's closest.
Okay, so I was one of the grant recipients along with Dr. Jessica Mitchell from our College of Education. She replaced her Human Growth and Development textbook with an OER textbook. And in the fall, she taught with her traditional text, and in the spring, she taught with the OER that I discovered for her. That was my part of the grant, was the discovery as the librarian. And it was really interesting, not only the cost savings, because the traditional textbook was $108. So in the spring, the students who took her course, it was over $4,000 in savings per student. Not per student, but all the students together. But also the satisfaction rate of the students in the spring was a 3.9. I mean, in the fall was a 3.9, and in the spring was a 4.8. So the satisfaction of the students with the text was a lot higher. And you know, there's all kinds of speculation as to why that number is so different, but a lot of people believe that students aren't actually purchasing the textbooks, right? So when they have the textbook, it's easier for them to make an evaluation of whether or not they like the text. And with a textbook that is free to them, yeah, it's really important. In addition, we were at the University of North Alabama, we're successful in, we applied for the ACRL Scalcom Roadshow to bring them the subsidized version. They do 5 a year across the United States, the subsidized version. So it's a cost of $2,000, and then they cover everything else. And we put in an application for it. It was kind of, I thought, a long shot, but we got it. And then ACHE and ACCS, they were really great about helping us actually fund it, because my university, University of North Alabama, is the lowest funded per FTE student in the state. Because of, a lot of it has to do with our location and our distance from Montgomery, where our legislatures are. So it's very hard for them to understand how we need money. And our president and provost are doing a great job of lobbying for it, but we just don't have the same funding that other schools in Alabama do. And if y'all know anything about Alabama, Alabama schools aren't very well funded in the first place. So when you're the lowest funded of poorly funded schools, it makes things difficult.
So at Athens State, I was a recipient of the first round through when we were doing the 3 major workshops for everyone across the state. Athens State hosted one of those, and so we got a good amount of money for that. And we set up the workshop where I was talking more or less to faculty and administrators, because we want administrators to support OER. And so I had 2 tracks running for that one. We had a little bit of money left over on that, and I'll tell you what I can do with that in a minute. Then also we received the grant for redoing a course. I worked with Dr. Kimberly Jack. She was doing medieval readings, so a literature course, ACHE-ACCS and they had one textbook. These, of course, are medieval literature, so you can find them online. And so I worked with her to redo her entire course with the online literature, and again, our satisfaction went up also, except for our students with that particular one, they wanted more contextual information about the time period, because of course they're reading medieval literature, and so, Old English. And it was really hard for them to understand some of the context behind what they were reading. So I'm working with Dr. Jack again on getting that done. And then I had a little bit of money left over from that. And so what I did with that money that I had left over was I hired an adjunct to be my OER librarian. Athens State is a higher education 2-year institution. We only have junior, senior level courses, so I have 5 librarians for all of my students, and that's it. And so I needed someone who could take over these projects. And so with the grant money that I was given, I have hired an adjunct, and this past year, I got more money to keep my adjunct through a grant. And so that's what I've done with the money that I've done. So anybody out there doing any OER projects or any grants, or know where you can find some money, good, come tell us.
So my name is Karen Bjork. I work at Portland State University. I run PDX Open, which is an open access textbook publishing program. We publish 21 open access textbooks, and we are fully funded by donors. It's all donation. Also being part of Oregon, we are part of Open Oregon, and so it's House Bill, 2781, I believe.
Yep.
And so that funds grants through community colleges as well as the 4-year schools. So we are able to essentially tap into both places. So we recently expanded our grants to now do adopt and adapt as well as creation. So,
Excellent.
yeah, so donors, tap into them.
Anybody else have anything that you're doing with OER grant money?
Got somebody over here?
Oh, we did? Yeah. I have to go around and take a look, otherwise I'll knock everything over.
So, my name is Christy Wilfong, and I work at Pate College, and we're starting off on doing more OER things, and we actually applied for a local foundation grant to join the Open Textbook Network, and then to do stipending for our faculty. So that will be doing peer reviews on Cohort open textbooks, and then also getting them to adopt one in their class. So it's small, but it's something.
Small?
And local foundations.
Oh, we. Yeah, we unplugged the mic somehow.
Sorry.
Small and local, by the way, if you are a small institution, is the way to start, honestly, because going too big is impossible. I'm just going to say that out loud.
And I'm also very lucky that both the president and the provost at my university are open education users, and they promote the use of open education resources. So we're getting ready to start a Provost Grant funded program at our university, because we do realize that while open education textbooks are free for students, it is time and effort on the part of the faculty, and they need, whether it's course release time, promotion and tenure, or actual just cash in their pocket, they need to be compensated in some way for the scholarship that they're going to put into it. You had a comment?
Yeah.
Let me get you the mic though.
Oh, I never. I get the Irish whispers.
But I think they're recording everything, so
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it's going to stretch that far.
Yeah, no,
No, that's it. Okay.
My name is Mark McBride. I'm part of the State University of New York system. About 5 years ago, we created a shared service called the SUNY OER Services, targeting high enrollment general education courses with open educational resources. We partnered with industry partner Lumen Learning, also the Open Learning Initiative. And from that, word got to our governor's office, and they ended up infusing New York State with about $8 million annually to expand open educational resources. We started down the publishing pathway, and we found out that our university press is probably better positioned to provide those publishing services. And what we do is we typically just work individually, and at the system level, one of my colleagues from SUNY is here, Corey Wilhelm, to really focus on faculty development, because we think that OER is really about changing teaching and learning, and not necessarily just about the license.
Excellent, thank you very much.
And then Bob.
Okay, okay, so we're gonna hit you two, and then we've got to move on to the next slide, because we're already 15 minutes.
I have a question, I hope that's allowed.
Oh, sure,
I've
absolutely.
heard promote, ask, and encourage. For this Alabama study, how did you compel faculty to switch to OER?
You're getting into the rest of the program. We had somebody else over here who was, yes, sir.
Well, I had a similar question, I guess,
Okay.
but I guess I should tout our open learning program too. Similar to Ron, I work with the South Carolina Commission on Higher Education and manage our statewide virtual library, Pascal, and we joined the Open Textbook Network, and next week they're coming to Columbia or Orangeburg and Greenville to do a series of training sessions for faculty. We also run an awareness program called PAL, where we're starting on teacher stuff. But my question is, how do you manage grants to faculty, or are you actually giving grants to faculty at this point? Because that's kind of where I'm hung up at the moment mechanically.
That sounds like a wrong question to me, so I'm just gonna-
I'll start out, and then I'll let my colleague jump into the conversation. So we modeled our RFP after what other consortia have done. For example, Affordable Learning Georgia. So we, and I don't want to jump ahead of myself, with hindsight I would have done a few things differently. We also had an MOU where we provided half the funding at the close of the first semester, once they provided deliverables, and then we provided half of the funding at the close of the spring semester. So as I said, the grants really vary considerably in the amount. It really depended, and I should mention that the grants were, the majority of the grants, just about all of them, other than the one for Catherine's library, were for general ed transferable classes. One of my colleagues at ACHE-ACCS actually calculated if we were to replace all the textbooks for general ed classes, just for the community colleges, the savings would be in excess of $25 million. So we thought this is going to give us the most bang for the buck. Now, not only did we look at that, but we looked for the greatest return on investment. So the higher the ROI, the better chances of getting a grant. So that was some of the criteria that we used. We, insofar as the larger grants, we wanted to show a complete transformation, and we wanted to see a transformation where there was collaboration either between faculty at 2- and 4-year institutions or across an entire department. So that's why there was a big distinction in the size of the grants.
I just want to touch on one other thing. You mentioned the Open Textbook Network. If anybody's interested, there are applications open right now for a certificate in OER librarianship. It closes on the 8th. If you are interested in getting that, it's a pretty competitive process, but I encourage people to apply to become, they just did their first cohort this past year. This will be their second cohort, and I know people who have done it who have had great return on that. So if you're interested and you're a librarian, you should apply for that. As far as grants with faculty and how I'm structuring mine with the Provost Grant program that we're about to get started, we're using some of the information from Affordable Learning Georgia, but also Open Oregon. The documents that Open Oregon has online and PDX Open has online about how they're asking about the information for, like, who's it gonna impact, how's it gonna impact, how big is the project. It's really important when you're thinking about, you know, I have faculty now coming to me saying, hey, I wanted, what is that, you know, that provost is gonna give money, how do I get some of that? But we wanna make sure that we are funding with our small pot of money right now, the best, highest impact OER that we can. And then, you know, if you don't get funded this go around, we want to make sure that we're still encouraging faculty to adopt and adapt OER, but maybe you'll get funding the second go around. But it's going to be those high enrollment, high impact classes first, and then it'll scale down. That's how we're looking at it.
I want to mention one other thing. I don't know if it was mentioned this morning. I wasn't able to attend the opening session, but sometime soon, if it hasn't already been released, the publication Charleston Voices will have a portion of a chapter about our OER grant program. So if you'd like to know more about it, look for that. It's, as I said, if it's not already available, it should be sometime soon, Charleston Voices.
All right, so we'll move into the encouraging faculty. Okay, so the first thing I did on my campus when we started our OER project is I did a campus climate survey of faculty awareness and use of OER. And you know, we did not get a very large sample size because, of course, we weren't offering money or free food to faculty to fill out any other forms. But we did get a good sampling. And we found out that we did have people that we didn't even know were using OER, that were using OER. But then we have the majority of the people who responded to the survey said, I don't really know much about it, but I'd be interested in potentially using it. So we started a series of education programs. Part of it was bringing the ACRL Skullcom Roadshow to town. But the other thing that I did last year here at the Charleston conference, I ran into a guy named Will Cross who works at North Carolina State University. And I went to so many of his sessions that I eventually had to say to him during the poster session, because I had a poster last year, I'm like, I'm not stalking you, I swear I'm not stalking you. But he was talking about open education. He was talking about things that I was really, really interested in. And I was able to get him to come to campus. And he came to campus for 2 days, and on the first day he offered for faculty just a presentation about why OER is important, right? Like if you build it, they will come sort of thing. And then the second day he did a workshop, and our Arts and Sciences, our College of Arts and Sciences gave us money to pay to have lunch provided rather than doing it as a brown bag. And we had a packed house for that. And when he left, the next day I had probably 16 emails from faculty saying, I want to do OER, this is magnificent. The second thing we've done is we've expanded our OER group, started with just 3 people. The head of our ETS who manages Canvas for us, that's our learning management system, myself and another librarian. We have added a tenured faculty member, a faculty who is at like the instructor or lecturer level, so they will not get tenure because there's different concerns for, you know, each of them. We've added Bethany Green, who is our student engagement specialist who works with our food insecure students because she understands the importance of having free textbooks. And we added a student, and he's one of my former students, and I added him specifically because he's on SGA, he's a senator. And 2 weeks ago, I was on the agenda at SGA, and I presented to them about why open is important and why when you're buying Cengage products or whatever, it's limited term access, it goes away, you don't get to keep it. You know, all of the Pearson, you know, they're great, some of the inclusive access, as they're using the term inclusive access, but you don't get to keep it. And so now they're drafting a resolution to support OER, which is gonna, I think, help push more faculty, because when students start agitating for something, faculty will start listening.
So for me, I am the OER librarian at my library, except I also added an adjunct person. She's part-time. Dr. Susan Herring used to work at our business college, and she retired, and she'd been doing odd projects back and forth with people. And so I came to her and said, please, please, please help me. I can't do this on my own. And she was gracious enough to say yes. But to start everything off, we did a campus survey also. I'm a much smaller institution, and anything that goes out from my provost as an email for faculty to give us feedback, typically most of them will do it. So mine came back, almost everybody filled it out, and asking them about what they knew about OER, if they were using it, that type of thing. Most of them are using OER, but don't realize that they're using it. YouTube videos. Hello. OER. They don't realize that that's what OER is. And so it became, for me, explaining for them what it is. And so what I did was I took a different track. I created a cohort. I have a cohort of 2 faculty members from each of my colleges, I have 3 colleges, who came, and each semester I put on a workshop from them. I brought somebody in to work with them for a day to 2 days each about OER, how to find it, how to adapt it, how to put it into Blackboard. And so that's what they've been doing. And most of them at this point have created something and used something in their Blackboard courses. I did not get funding to do that again this year, and so I'm looking at getting some grant funding to do that again next year for my second cohort. But my first cohort is still meeting monthly. They actually asked to be able to meet monthly so that they can keep each other going. And so if you have faculty who are interested and are willing to do that type of thing, they will do it. We originally fed them, and then I stopped feeding them, but they kept coming, so it was fine. And with encouraging faculty and promoting, administration is going to be your key. All of my deans are on board with this, with the idea of this. It's just, it's Alabama, and our funding isn't quite where it needs to be. And so that became part of the issue that we have at Athens, is that, you know, I have to go outside for the funding to do most of this stuff. Does anybody have any suggestions or questions about encouraging faculty and encouraging promotion on your campus? Yes.
So I'm from West Virginia, so I understand the funding. And so my question is, how do you explain to people that even though OER resources are free, you need money to implement a program around, especially with course release or other things for faculty, because we're already looking at, you know, a 15% budget cut this year across the board, and, you know, taking away course release time and teaching more course hours. So how do you explain to people who don't really know what OER is that you need money to get OER started?
In our case, it was hire a whole new administration who loves OER. But not everybody can do that. I came in at the same time as our new provost, and he's so like pro OER, and so is my president. When he does his annual, like, beginning of the semester email to faculty, he teaches a course, the president of the university, every fall. And he put in that letter this year that OER was going to be what he used in his course. So you can't get a better endorsement than the president of the university saying, I'm using OER. They also made it part of our strategic plan. So I'm lucky in that sense, and I think it's hard to convince people that, you know, they think, oh, it's a free resource. It's a free resource, right? But that's the education part. That's when bringing in people like Will Cross or bringing in the ACRL Roadshow to help administration understand that, yeah, sure, it's free for students, but you're asking our faculty to invest. I mean, if you're just incorporating OER, like if you're taking something and you're using it fair use or whatever into your class, that's different than wholesale creating something from the ground up. I have faculty in my foreign languages ESL program, and they are building modules from the ground up for online deployment in Canvas. And they're doing all of the work. They're not using anything. And I have sat with them for hours about Creative Commons licensing and how to find, you know, stuff on the internet. And I can't even tell you how long Katie has put into this. And she's done it as part of her regular job, in addition to teaching her like 4 course load, you know, her 4-4. So, and she's done it with no funding. So we're hopeful that when the Provost Grant program rolls out, that she'll be able to apply for the funding. But I don't know, does people who have like PDX SUNY, can you talk about like how you convince people to give you money?
So I have a different tack on this again. So for me, what I do is I treat it like a service like I have in my library. So I take statistics on it, how much time you're spending. So just like with a reference transaction, you take how much time you're spending, how hard it is, and all of that. We use the read scale still. So I do that with my OER also. So anytime I do a consultation with someone, I log how much time it takes, and it goes into my statistics, so that when my administration asks for statistics, this is how much time I'm spending on these things. Has that gotten me more funding? No. Has it justified what we're doing? Yes. They understand what we're doing, they understand how important it is. Most of the funding that we're getting goes to the faculty so that they can have release time to do their stuff. I have a dean of arts and sciences who has, it's not really a grant, it's more like a stipend that if anybody's doing research projects, he'll give them a release time to do a research project. He's agreed to allow OER to be one of those research projects that if they want to redesign their course, he's agreed to allow them to do that with that stipend after we talk to him. So it's hard, I'm not going to say it's not. And my administration is not quite as on board as her administration is. So
I'm very lucky, I know that.
I have to justify everything we're doing. And when I give them the information, they understand it and they encourage it. And then I ask them for money and they go, well. And that's when we get into the, okay, so I'm gonna stop doing more with less. I'm just gonna tell you the truth. So, which is more important? OER or reference? Reference is more important. Okay, so I have an adjunct for that. I don't have a full-time person for that. I can't afford a full-time person for that. I can afford a full-time person for graduate students to help them with their research. We have 3 graduate programs, and so it becomes one of those situations where you have to balance. Anybody else have any suggestions to answer her question? Yeah.
So we approach this in a 2-pronged way. The first one is we do student surveys. So students who use the open textbooks, we actually have and use their voice, so we get their permission. They're all anonymous. And we use that as a way to tell the story of how OERs have impacted their life. And we essentially do it as a way to say that, you know, open educational resources is really part of a mission, and it's what it impacts our students, and we have a retention issue at Portland State. And if we want to be able to keep students in the classroom, we have to find ways to try to reduce the cost, and this is reducing that cost. And here is the students' voices to tell you how it has reduced the cost and how it's impacted them. In regards to getting money, I use my faculty who have written the books. All of them write a 1-page scenario of what their experience of writing an open educational resource was, how much time it took for them, how much of their own money they put into it, and then we put that front and center. So every time we publish a book, we tell their story of what that creation was like. We don't always make it public, but we always send it to the university and to the provost. And that is what has really compelled people to be able to want to participate and to give money. And we've actually have increased our funding. And that's also how we get donors, because we tell the story of the students, we tell the story of the authors, and then we show how we are getting that worldwide impact. Because the other thing you have to look at, particularly from your university, is what is the impact that your university is getting? Are your books getting adapted at other institutions? Are people excited to hear what's happening at your university? And how can you also tell that story? So I try to tell the story from various perspectives, and I very much leave myself out of it, because I say they can tell the story. I may help them with the project management piece of it, but it's really it's the students and it's the authors, and it's, you know, it's all of that. So, and we've been really fortunate with alumni who see, you know, they remember how they struggled with going through school, and they're like, oh, if only I had an OER when I was going through school. Sure, you know, our Alumni Association has been one of our largest donors, so they no longer give individual student scholarships, they just give to our OER program.
I'm stealing some of those.
That's nice. Yeah.
I just have a question.
Like, you might want to go.
You've talked, several people have talked about the surveys that they have developed. Are you willing to share those?
Actually, My survey was built off of one that the Open Textbook Network did, which was shared under a CC BY license, and I took that and a few different others, and it's actually going to be in the next International Journal of Open Education Resources. We are publishing, we got an IRB for it, and it'll be published in the ACHE-OER in the next issue. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of this, I just got the email that said, hey, we're getting ready to publish it. Do you want an image to go with it? Make sure it's a CC BY image, of course. That was a great segue, and I'm stealing the telling the story idea because I think that's fantastic for what we do next. For the student survey, that's a really important piece, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted Tevin, Polly is his name, that's our student who is on our OER working group, because I need student government's help when I push out a survey next year to the students about OER. Because in addition to them drafting the resolution, I want that for the reporting back. I want to be able to go to our administration and say, those dollars that you've given us for OER, this is what it's doing. Here's how students are feeling about it. Because my university, we're small, we just hit 8,000 students. We've increased enrollment and we're 8,000 students. But we really care. I've never worked in an institution where I really felt like everybody is kind of in it together, and we really are. But we still need to see that ROI, right? You need to be able to show that, hey, you gave me a couple $1,000s, or you gave me 10,000 or 20,000, whatever, to do this. Here's what I've done with it. Here's how the students feel about it. Here's how we're increasing retention. You know, I've had students who are dropping classes that I know of, but it's anecdotal at this point, so I need to do that survey. So yeah, that's the next step. Faculty survey first to figure out who's using, where we need to go with it, and then the student survey to figure out how it's impacting them.
So at my university, I wear two hats. I am administration, because I'm the library director, and I'm a librarian. So explaining to my librarians why the numbers are so important and why I stress the metrics so much is a little hard, because they're doing the work. And as you get into the work, you forget about the other part of it. But as an administrator, I know my administration is not going to listen to me at all unless I bring them numbers. And so that's where the important part for me with reporting back. I report back to everybody. I make sure I have enough statistics for the faculty, and I tell my faculty, look, this is what you guys have done. This is rah, keep on going. I report to my SGA. I let them know that we now have this dimension OER. By the way, here's the LibGuide. Go look for more stuff. Encourage your faculty to use it. I report back to my administration. I report back to everybody. Is that translating to more money? To a degree, yes, because I've been able to drop some older services that we don't need anymore in favor of something else. And nobody's complaining about it, which is kind of amazing in a library. You know that, right? It's kind of amazing. But with the reporting back feature, we also have to report back to Ron, because most of my OER money comes from him. And so I have to keep numbers for him so that they can do publishing, which is what he wants to talk about.
Before I get started on reporting back, I do want to mention, we floated the idea of an OER fee, and the library deans and directors didn't like that. They said that the students are already burdened, but that may be something that could work elsewhere. If not an OER fee, if you don't have a library fee, you could couch it with the library fee. And I think if you were to show the cost savings to students, the potential cost savings to students, they'd get on board for it. Now, what we have done is we have communicated, we have marketed what we have done. For example, at an ACHE commission meeting, we wanted to have students there, but we couldn't get the students there, but we had 3 faculty members from various institutions across the state come and talk about their experiences. They were award recipients. They loved it. They praised it. There were provosts, there were presidents in the audience, and they paid attention. So obviously there's interest around the state. And what I've experienced, one of the best things about this, not only the financial savings for the students, but retention and completion, the potential of completing school on time. We have a program, 15 to Finish, A lot of students, as you know, they don't finish in 4 years. It may take them 6 years. Unfortunately, in many cases, they drop out. So we've got to find ways, collectively, we've got to find ways of keeping them in school, finishing on time, and doing well in school, providing those educational materials up front. So I mentioned to you we had an RFP, we had an MOU. I thought they were pretty good. Now, with hindsight, they could have been a little tighter, a little better. For example, we asked the lead of each grant program to report back. For example, we asked them to provide grades, we asked them to glean student satisfaction with the OER. Well, you can imagine what kind of comments we got. Love it from the students. 9 times out of 10, the response is about the OER replacement for the traditional print textbook was something like, love it, saving me so much money. We were hoping we'd get more descriptive information. So if I was to do it over, I would probably, tell them, tell us all about it. Is this helping you? How is this helping you financially? Can you, is it a toss-up between the book and eating? Which I've heard of before. So, yeah, look for more detailed descriptions like that. I think what we would do if we had to do over would be offer, $50, $100 gift cards or something like that as an incentive for the students to report back. Similarly, we didn't get as much demographic information as we would have liked to have gotten. Let me tell you a little bit about that. So, recently, our executive director was interested in subgroups, Pell Grant recipients, females, African Americans, etc. He was writing an article. So I had requested that from the leads of the universities and the colleges. Now the college system was able to provide it because they regularly gather that kind of information. But with the universities, it was kind of hit or miss. Some were able to provide it, some weren't. So if I was to redo the MOU, I think I would make it a little tighter by asking them to capture that information. Now, the information that we did capture, as I was sharing with my colleagues earlier, it really asks more questions and provides answers. Why did females in X class do better than males? Why did African Americans do better in this course than everybody else? Those kinds of things. So, yeah, there's a lot of good information out there. I just wish we'd captured more of it.
Ask them for their feedback.
What have your experiences been?
On what? On reporting back, or what kind of information you need to keep, or, what's your experience with keeping that information?
I'm going to call out Mark. Well, he rose his hand at the same time.
So I think probably the most attractive piece, and maybe my colleagues in Oregon and elsewhere can support this. I think for administrators, I think one of the things that excites them the most is the amount of money that's saved, right? And if you can start showing the savings to administrators, then they can wrap their head around it. And then this is also where you roll in that OER is free like puppies,
Right.
There is a cost associated with this because there is no such thing as free, right? And then for faculty, I think the easier you can make the transition for them, the better, knowing that if they know there's a support network, where we've seen the libraries in SUNY take a leadership role in being that support network, like the broker in a community of practice, that's when we've seen it to be the most impactful. So the libraries don't have to take a deep dive into the learning outcomes and the overall composition of the course. They can shepherd a project throughout the institution to make the faculty, or maybe even possibly the entire department, whole with their OER efforts. And then reporting back out on the retention, reporting back out on the grades, reporting back out again on the savings, because that's how you begin to build that momentum. Because the grassroots effort, it burns you out quick. And if it's always going to be a hearts and minds argument, you're going to run out of steam. The more data you have, the more other people can carry the message for you.
So if you're starting out, remember, collect everything and keep it someplace.
Right.
This is kind of going back to the faculty. Have you gotten any pushback from faculty who have written the textbooks that you're now encouraging them to replace with OER?
Oh, so you're talking about the print textbooks?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let me explain about Athens State. Most of my faculty have been there 10 plus years, sometimes 20. A couple of them graduated from Athens State. And so when we started talking OER on our campus, I have a couple of them who wrote specifically in education. I have one education faculty member who, don't tell me that I said any of this.
It's being recorded.
Oh, okay. I won't name names. But the seminal text that everybody uses is the text that this person wrote. And so when I approached this person about OER and making it available, it was a flat no. And so it becomes one of those things where there are some faculty who feel that the deficit to potential earnings doesn't outweigh the benefit to the students. And those are the type of arguments that you can't make. You're never going to win. And that's when you go back to administration and you start saying, okay, this is why this is important. You find it in a different angle and you don't worry about those faculty. Because you can't worry about those faculty. You have to concentrate in other areas.
What about those that feel that the OER is lesser quality than the commercial text that they get?
So with the lesser quality issue, I always tell them, you're the one choosing the quality. There are different types of text out there. There's different sections. If you want to use a chapter from one and then another chapter from another one, it's entirely up to you. You are the faculty member. It is your class, and you choose it. So if you want to talk to me about quality, read it first, and then we'll talk it over. And that becomes, when you actually have them, you had that experience too? Yeah. When you actually talk to them and have them read the quality, and then you give them another text and have them read that quality, and then they start to realize that, okay, no, this is very similar to what I'm already teaching. I can't use that argument. And they start to open back up to it. It's more or less opening their minds to the possibility.
But in addition, real talk, there's not OER for everything. And you're not
No.
going to find a quality OER that's going to replace everything in every course on your campus. And you have to be willing to have those hard conversations with somebody who's really, really excited about using OER. You say, well, you know what? You're going to have to create something because there's not something out there. They just want you to like hand them an OpenStax textbook and say, here you go, or something from Merlot or something from PDX and say, here's the book that's going to replace the book you're using. And if it's not out there, I just told my provost who was asking about a book for his spring course that he's teaching. He's like, hey, can you find me OER? I found some stuff, but it's all business and I want public institutions. And I'm like, that doesn't exist. But you could create it, but he can't give himself, I guess, the Provost Grant to do that since he is the provost. That wouldn't be good. But yeah, you're going to get a lot of that. And the other big thing, aside from quality that you'll get pushback on from faculty, is I don't want to use the term kickback, but I have one department on campus that has a text that they've adopted, and for every copy that gets sold to students, they get a cut of it, which helps fund some of the initiatives that they have in there. So some of the speaker series that they have or whatever are funded from their cut of the textbook that they get. And trying to get that department to give up that textbook, I know that's a lost cause. That's not going to happen because I can't give them a kickback on OER. So, and because we're such a low-funded institution, the only way they can have that speaker series is to have that funding from the adoption of that textbook. So there's a battle I'm not going to fight.
At the commission, we respect academic freedom. So we've got to, although we really support OER, we've got to be neutral in that respect. I know of one situation where administration at an institution was very gung-ho on OER. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the faculty weren't, so there was real pushback. And they basically had to dismantle what they had already started, and they had a strong program going. So I think it's better if it's a groundswell. I think it's better if the faculty are behind it, but also respect their choice, their academic freedom.
I have a question about, oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I kind of have a question about logistics. When you're trying to gather the work of faculty who are using OER so that you can teach stats, where do you gather this information? Do you try to create some sort of repository? Do you try to catalog these books somehow so you know these are all the OER resources being used on our campus? Or can it not be that centralized, treading on academic freedom? Like at what level can you try to put lines around the OER library of the campus?
For the grant program, we actually required grant recipients to post their resources. If they created something from scratch, to post it on the Alabama OER Commons, which is on our statewide virtual library's website. Now, having said that, the majority of them actually went out and found the OER somewhere else. So they're coming from everywhere across the universe. Now, I do encourage everyone in the state to use the resource because we wanted a one-stop shop. And our statewide virtual library is literally available to everyone in the state. It has GeoIP authentication, so if you're just physically in this state, whether you're a resident or a visitor, you would have access to all these resources.
So I have an internal document, it doesn't go out to anybody. And Susan took it over when she came and started doing the OER for me. Basically, everybody that she works with, they have a line on a spreadsheet, and she keeps links as to what they're using, how they're using it, what class it's being used in. Occasionally, we will ask our faculty member, did you use it this semester? If you did, how many students did you touch? And so that information is into a spreadsheet, and that's how I'm keeping most of that data. It is not publicized, and I will give, if asked for it, I will give it to my administration and my provost and my deans, but I don't give it out to anybody else.
Same sort of thing. It's in here, it's in my computer, but it's not a public thing at this point. But we have an institutional repository, so when faculty actually do start creating, adapting their own OER, and it's shared under a Creative Commons license, it will be in our repository so that it is findable and reusable, because that's the bottom line of OER, is that it should be reusable. And so we want to make sure, and that's a big thing, is getting faculty to understand Creative Commons licensing, which, I thought was really, really simple, but it appears it is very, very difficult. When I was working with my ESL faculty who were creating that whole course, they're like, how can we put a Creative Commons non-commercial license on this and then charge students to take the course? And I'm like, because you're paying for the credit, not for the materials. But it's something that, because I work with it all the time, I feel like it's very, very simple. It turns out to be a little bit more complex. And then kind of just to segue, because we're getting low on time, talking about sustainability, and I want to talk to the people who have like the really good sustainable programs. I would love for you both to talk about that because I use your stuff all the time. But also, one of the things that I'm doing at my institution is we're going beyond just OER, because again, there's not an OER for everything. We are looking at bringing somebody to talk about fair use to campus. I'm helping one of my Spanish instructors create a textbook, and we're using fair use for the literature pieces that she's putting in her textbook. It's not something that we could probably put out on the open market because we are claiming fair use for the pieces, but it is still going to be a free textbook for students. We have a textbook affordability program that I'll be talking about tomorrow, plugging my program tomorrow. But we're buying textbooks, we're investing funds in textbooks, and we're also trying to make sure that we're strategically purchasing materials for our library, our databases and so forth, so that they can be used in support of programs. One of the most recent examples is Visible Body. We bought it thinking our kinesiology and our anatomy programs would use it. Our nursing program is the heaviest user of Visible Body, and it's replacing a lot of the normal text that they would use. And if we're going to spend library money, we might as well spend library money on something that's going to get used heavily. So it's kind of beyond the OER, but that's kind of how we're sustaining our program right now. So You want to talk?
So with sustaining in my program, how many of you have a faculty mentoring program on your campus? So a new faculty comes in, talk to those people, get to your new faculty as quickly as possible. Most of my older faculty are probably never going to adapt OER, but my new faculty, when they're hired in, if I can get in with that person who's putting together that mentoring program, which I have done, every single new faculty member, we had 12 of them this year, have come to us and said, help us design that course, help us with the OER. And so that's the first and foremost thing that I have to say about sustainability, besides, data and yada, yada, yada. But get with your person who creates your mentoring program and get into that system, and you'll get the new faculty as they start.
Good talk. I just wanted to ask how this influences or fits in with tenure and promotion for faculty.
Jennifer, does it do it for you? Because at this point, it doesn't do it for us.
Yeah, it's a big question. A lot of my faculty have said, I really don't care about money, I don't care about a course release, how can I put this in my tenure and promotion package, right? And so as we're developing the Provost Grant program that we're going to be rolling out soon, we are going to try to go to our shared governance and to the faculty senate and have the language actually changed, if possible, to say that, that creation or more so than just adoption, but adapting OER or creation of OER will count as scholarship toward tenure and promotion. And that was one of the good things about adding a tenured faculty person to our little working group, because it wasn't something that two librarians, even though we're tenure track, it wasn't something that two librarians and the ETS guy were thinking about. But then having the instructor level person there who doesn't qualify for tenure, it's a different thing for her. The course releases, because she's teaching a 4.4 and can I get a course release? That's more important to her than the actual dollar amount. So yeah, tenure and promotion is really, really important. I don't know, do you guys have tenure and promotion in your stuff? No?
Yeah, we had a school add it to their promotion and tenure portfolio at their institution. SUNY Delhi is a school. And they look at OER as just an innovative tool inside the classroom, so it kind of dovetails nicely to some of their other efforts with instruction. And it's a 4-year institution, it's not doctoral granting. It's College of Technology, we refer to them as.
I'm going to look that up on the web later.
Yeah, I can share it. Yeah. And there's more of that coming. I mean, what's interesting is we got our faculty governance at the system level to start weighing in, and they were skeptics. In fact, one of the skeptics is at SUNY Canton. And she became an OER adopter, and now she's a strong advocate at our SUNY University Faculty Senate level, because as she says, I was completely wrong about OER.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things to remember about anything that we do is that we're not siloed and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean,
right.
Affordable Learning Georgia, what they're doing in LSU, Oregon, the California system, the SUNY and CUNY system, both.
Right.
There's great work being done, and it's because we're committed to open. It's all usually under an open license, so you can go in there and you can take it and you can adapt it however you need to for doing the surveys of your faculty or your students. Like the Florida student survey is going to be the survey that I'm going to mimic for my student survey because it's so good. And they've done it a couple of times and they've got strong data in it, and I use it in presentations to administration, and then my administration is, oh, well, when were you going to see this from our students? When I can breathe, we're going to do that. But yeah.
So we've covered a lot. I'm just going to say that out loud. Did we cover everything you wanted? Does anyone have anything that we didn't cover that you want to ask a question about? Do you want to ask a question about anything we've said? Anything at all from the audience? Oh, yay.
Can you just talk a little bit more about the relationship between ACHE, which is the worst thing, and the libraries within the state, to clarify a little bit more about did the ideas come from you? Were the ideas really coming from the libraries? Like, how did you get this off the ground?
I'm going to fill this one. I'm going to make Ron stand over there and look pretty. So ACHE is the Alabama Commission of Higher Education. So they are the governing body that gets all education institutions money. NAIL, another really bad acronym, is the Network of Academic Alabama Libraries. Ron used to be the director of NAIL. That's now Sheila. She's sitting right over there. And Ron brought it to the NAIL Executive Committee and Board and Body about OER about 2-3 years ago now, right, Ron? And we have a retreat, a working retreat in Orange Beach that we do every year, and he brought Galileo in. And that was kind of the first time I heard about OER. I know he'd been having conversations with the higher institutions, the bigger ones, for a while, and hadn't really made any traction. And when he brought that in with Galileo and started talking, again, he was talking a library fee. None of us are going to do a library fee, it's not going to happen. But it was one of those things where it was like, okay, this is something we can all start working on individually. We may not be able to do it as a group, but we can definitely do something individually. We can start working a little bit more. So it started off as an idea of everyone jumping on board, but when that didn't happen, it became more of an idea of institutions that are interested in, let's go ahead and start doing a groundswell. And that's sort of how that sort of developed. Am I right on that?
Right. Yeah, that's right. So, and to provide a little bit more background, the organization, or the members of the organization, were very interested. We just didn't have the funding to provide 3 big statewide workshops. So I went to the former executive director of ACHE asking for some seed money. We worked with influential state legislative leaders. I can't tell you how many emails and meetings and letters were sent back and forth, went nowhere. All it takes is one person. So even though the former executive director of ACHE was very supportive, the new executive director of ACHE, Dr. James Purcell, was familiar with OER from working in Rhode Island. He came to us from Rhode Island. He's been the SHIO across the country, I think 3 or 4 different states now. So he was familiar, and I said, I want this amount of money for 3 workshops, done, just like that. I went back to him, I said, I want some money to have an OER grant program, done, just like that. So a lot of times it just comes down to being in the right place at the right time and finding a champion. I want to mention a couple other things as we're about to run out of time here, but I just want to real quickly mention a couple other things. Going forward, we may not have a round 2 of the ACHE-ACCS OER grant program, but I'm sure ACHE's going to continue to provide grants. As a matter of fact, we provided a grant to one of the institutions to have an affordable learning conference this coming spring, realizing that OER is great, but it's not for everyone. Knowing that our purpose is to make higher ed more affordable and accessible, we need to show the whole range of affordable learning options. So Mr. McBride in the back is going to be our keynote speaker. And the reason I wanted Mr. McBride to be our keynote speaker, and he's not a plant, by the way, I'm surprised to see him show up here today, was because they're using both OER and he mentioned to you working with Lumen. So I think OER is great, but one size does not necessarily fit all. So look for other ways of making higher ed more affordable and more accessible. Anything else, ladies?
I can sing again.
Oh, we have a question. We have a question.
Yes.
Just real quick, is there any impact on school accreditation, positive or negative?
That's a rough question. I don't know, is there anything in this?
Not that I can think of, no. As I mentioned, one of the things that we wanted to accomplish was to make more materials available that would be for general ed classes transferable between the 2- and 4-year institutions, but nothing really pertaining to SACS accreditation.
Though I'd love to see with SACS accreditation, you know, how you have to do the, what's the thing that you have to do, like our thing, the space was that, what is that, which one? the project that you
The
have
high
to do.
impact learning.
Yeah, it's called, the QEP, thank you. I would love to have like a QEP around open, not just open education, but just open access as well, and using open access sources and textbook affordability. I would love to see that.
I'm gonna say this is a sore subject for me because we are going through accreditation in 2021. I'm working on my SACS document now. With SACS, the QEP must be ground up.
Yeah.
And so ours was not open this year. I'm rather disappointed. But with accreditation, because of the way SACS is wording their oh gosh, what is, thank you. What is that word? Because of the way they're wording their standards, OER, if you spin it the right way, is going to be positive no matter what. It's just a matter of how you spin it. And that's an opinion that I have about SACS accreditation. But at this point, I can't see a negativity to OER as long as the faculty members are being diligent and going through and choosing what they believe is best for the course. Do we have any other questions? Comment? Any comments? Ooh, comments.
I just want to say, if you're not already doing something, do it. Because as you've heard today, there's great return on investment. Not only that, and not only the cost savings, but think about the retention, think about how you can help your students maybe finish on time, those kinds of things. And as I mentioned, if you just find one champion, whether that's someone on your campus who is an OER supporter, who will talk to fellow faculty members about it, that can make all the difference, it really can. Thanks, folks. Appreciate your time today.